Monday at 11.
An astonishing sight. President Reagan greeted by Soviet General Secretary Gorbachev inside the Kremlin. The Moscow summit begins. And an astonishing sight for Muscovites out for a stroll. President and Nancy Reagan take the summit over the Kremlin wall directly to the people.
This is the CBS Evening News. I'm Susan Spencer in New York.
I'm Dan Rather, reporting again tonight from a now partially moonlit Kremlin. Good evening. That Reagan stroll this afternoon could be the first inkling of summit surprises to come. Ronald Reagan set foot on Soviet soil for the first time in his life today on a smashingly beautiful summer-like Sunday. The warmth of the day and the greetings played against some of the harder realities of superpower politics and special agendas. Reportedly, some sparks flew at the first man-to-man summit session over the agenda item Ronald Reagan wants to talk up most, human rights. For his part, Gorbachev was punching up the idea that he had gotten Cold Warrior Ronald Reagan to reverse course and policies and come to the heart of what Mr. Reagan used to call the evil empire. This was noted several times in the official Soviet television coverage of the Reagan arrival. White House correspondent Bill Plant begins our coverage of the fourth Reagan-Gorbachev summit, the first to bring a United States president to Moscow in 14 years.
For Ronald Reagan, the touchdown of Air Force One on Soviet soil was the end of a long journey in more ways than one. 25 years of militant public anti-communism notwithstanding, the president was welcomed with full military honors to the nation he once called an evil empire. To crowds lining the road under the stars and stripes and hammer and sickle, the president, hand out the window, waved for most of the 20-minute trip, something he never does at home. Whisked through the fortress walls of the ancient Kremlin into the splendor of the Grand Palace, the Reagans greeted Raisa and Mikhail Gorbachev like old friends. Gorbachev's welcome contained a hinted hope that Ronald Reagan's first visit here would further his new openness toward the Soviets.
Aware of your interest in Russian proverbs, let me add another one to your collection. It is better to see once than to hear 100 times.
The president, responding with a proverb of his own, seemed to suggest that he is in no hurry to conclude a new strategic arms treaty.
I thought I would mention a literary saying from your past, Radi sia nya naya tara pilsa. It was born. It wasn't rushed.
But at the first meeting of this summit, the General Secretary tried again to raise expectations when asked if there might be still another summit meeting later in the year for a new arms treaty. The president, who has been saying for weeks he wanted to meet the people here, wasted little time. Plunging into a bustling Sunday crowd on a busy street of shops and cafes, he and Mrs. Reagan walked through a throng of delighted Muscovites for several blocks. In the crush of reporters and security people, a KGB agent shoved so hard at one point that the First Lady nearly went down. On the way back, both Reagans denied that they were trying to outdo Gorbachev's December performance in Washington. Whether or not he was intent on matching Gorbachev gesture for gesture, part of Mr. Reagan's reason for getting in touch with the Soviet people is to highlight the human rights issue. And the constant references to it have clearly annoyed the Soviets.
But we don't like when someone from outside is teaching us how to live.
Though both sides say that today's first meeting was very cordial, Mr. Reagan will continue to emphasize human rights tomorrow in a visit to a monastery and a meeting with dissidents. The Soviets are charging that the U.S. has human rights problems of its own. U.S. officials see that as a sure sign the message is hitting home. Bill Plant, CBS News, with the president in Moscow.
President Ronald Reagan.
The Soviets could watch President Reagan's arrival live on television, and in the living room of Benjamin Charney, it was an emotional, powerful moment. Charney is a Jewish refusnik, a man who has tried to leave the Soviet Union for 9 years, a man who, with other Jewish refusniks, will meet President Reagan tomorrow.
His visit here is my hope, and so just when I saw him stepping on this land, I thought probably that means my stepping out from this country.
The president's well-publicized commitment to human rights has begun to make a difference, not just to refuseniks, but also out there in the streets. The Soviets are aware of human rights as a topic at the summit. An issue that used to be off-limits is now front burner.
We have a place to live and wages. You have more democratic freedoms, and you know how to use them. Unfortunately, people here don't know how to use them.
Soviet leaders cringe when the president speaks of human rights, but they know they can't stop it and don't know how else to respond to it.
This is only natural. It seems to me that nobody likes it when somebody else is trying to make him a pupil.
Gorbachev is using President Reagan's visit to build his own statue, and because of that can hardly ignore what the president has to say. The image of the rogue, belligerent Ronald Reagan is gone, allowing his message to burn through.
The thing is that human rights are abused in our country, and in yours a little bit. It's complicated. It can't always be wonderful. Do you agree?
For all the talk about Soviet PR successes in the past, human rights is an issue the Americans have pushed on the agenda. The Soviets might complain bitterly about it, the arm twisting might not always work, but the administration has forced the Soviets to confront human rights in public. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Moscow.
Raisa Gorbachev played host to First Lady Nancy Reagan today and held hands with her on a tour of treasures of the Kremlin. Correspondent Jacqueline Adams reports both of them tried hard to play down reports they don't get along.
As they toured the Kremlin today, Raisa Gorbachev and Nancy Reagan looked like the best of friends. According to former Chief of Staff Donald Regan, though, the First Lady's initial reaction to Mrs. Gorbachev was, "Who does that dame think she is?"
Mrs. Reagan, you think you will get along better this time? We got along very well every other time.
I heard this question again now. I would like to say, I think it's rather, it's not serious.
The First Lady surprised observers by holding hands.
Public displays of affection are a very Russian woman kind of thing to do. It's hard to say that they're friends, but it sure looks good.
Not everything was hearts and flowers, though. Inside the Kremlin's Assumption Cathedral, Mrs. Reagan pointedly asked about its religious services.
Is it mainly used as just a museum, or is it used? Now wait, I haven't finished. Or is it used for religious activities also?
The First Lady's time alone together during this Moscow summit is deliberately brief, though the two couples will dine together 5 times this week. After tomorrow's visit to a school, Mrs. Reagan is done with Raisa Gorbachev. Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, Moscow.
I'll be back later with more from the Kremlin. In a moment, Susan Spencer in New York will have tonight's other major stories.
You're listening to the highest standard for telephone clarity, an AT&T phone. But what about cordless phones? The trouble is too many of them sound like this. That's why AT&T developed this new generation of cordless phones with clarity that rivals our corded phones. Now, when you can buy a cordless phone that sounds like this, or an AT&T cordless 52 or 5300 that sounds like this, the clear choice is the right choice.
When you have heartburn, you can bet on effective cherry-flavored Rolaids antacid. Calcium-rich, sodium-free, and a winning cherry taste. Cherry-flavored Rolaids. Tastes like cherry, works like Rolaids.
Hemorrhoids. They hurt, burn, and swell. And more doctors recommend Anusol to relieve the hurting than all other hemorrhoid medicines combined. Anusol is the word to remember for relief.
Another day is turned to night. Close your eyes, say goodnight. Sweet dreams are on their way. All is well as you end the day. Sleep safe, sweet dreams, good night.
Sominex 2 has the one sleep ingredient doctors recommend most to help you fall asleep safely without worry. Sominex 2.
Good night.
A leading Shiite Muslim cleric promised today to do his best to free the hostages believed held in South Beirut. Despite this pledge and the new Syrian military occupation of the suburbs, hopes for the captives' release remain dim. Bert Quint in Damascus reports.
The hostages could be within shouting distance of these Syrian soldiers who have moved into the heartland of Lebanon's fundamentalist extremists. But 3 days after the long-awaited Syrian deployment in South Beirut, freedom for the kidnapped foreigners still seems a long way off. This was more like a military exercise than an invasion. Approved by the Iranians, it was designed to end a round of fighting between rival Muslim militias, one backed by Syria, the other by Iran. And it is becoming clear that the release of the hostages wasn't part of the deal. The big fundamentalist barracks is off limits to the Syrians. It's just possible that the 9 Americans and other kidnapped victims are there. And if the kidnappers had wanted to move them out of Beirut, there was plenty of time while Iran and Syria were negotiating. The Syrians continued digging in South Beirut today, but Damascus knows the longer they stay there, the greater the pressure on them to liberate the hostages. And Syria's information minister seemed to be trying to lessen that pressure when he told reporters the troops will pull out in a few days, leaving Lebanese security forces, who are unable to secure anything, supposedly in charge. Syria's role, the minister says, will continue to be that of middleman. That's a diplomatic way of saying that if the U.S. or any other country wants to get its citizens released, it has to deal with the Ayatollahs. Bert Quint, CBS News, Damascus.
Pope John Paul named 25 new cardinals today, including Detroit Archbishop Edmund Shaka and James Hickey, the Archbishop of Washington, D.C. The new princes of the church will receive their symbolic red hats during installation ceremonies in Rome next month. For auto racing fans, this Memorial Weekend brings the big day, the Indianapolis 500. Rick Mears was the winner of today's race for the 3rd time in his career. In 2nd place was defending champion Al Unser Sr. Michael Andretti was 3rd. At Arlington National Cemetery, there was a special Memorial Weekend tribute today to those who fought and died in the Korean War. This year marks the 35th anniversary of the truce that ended that war. In the Lake Tahoe area of Nevada and California, holiday weekenders were surprised by unseasonable snow. As much as 8 inches fell in higher elevations. The snow may have been unwelcome to vacationers, but it did ease a long dry spell. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, the changing face of superpower relations, part of tonight's special Inside Sunday report.
Daddy, I want my teddy bear.
I want my soda.
I want my Serta.
Get comfortable. Get a Serta Perfect Sleeper. It's the only mattress that goes beyond firmness to give you the exclusive Serta surface with layers of Serta comfort. It'll spoil you for sleeping any other way.
I want my Serta.
It's Lobster Fest time at Red Lobster. We know what you love the most. At our Lobster Fest, we do lobster best. No one else even comes close.
From $8.95, kids just 99 cents.
Have a tempting lobster trio, Mornay, if you're in the mood. Our tails are the best at our Lobster Fest. We know how you love seafood.
Now Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, lobster and shrimp trio just $11.95.
Major appliances that aren't brand new can scare potential buyers away. If your real estate company can't protect them, you're not listed with the right real estate company, because you're not listed with an ERA broker.
This is where we make the new 3M surgical clipper by Remington. Hospitals are now replacing blades to shave patients for surgery. You can also benefit from this advanced technology with the Remington microscreen. It shaves as close as a blade or your money back.
With all the attention on Moscow this week, Americans are getting an up-close look at glasnost, the new Soviet policy of openness. On Inside Sunday tonight, we look at just how open the Soviet Union is now, how open to religion, how open to American business, and how open to change, including change in U.S.-Soviet relations.
Kindly come ahead, board the flight at this time. Aeroflot Flight 318. Sir, can we get
Well over 100,000 Americans will visit the Soviet Union this year.
I think it's wonderful. I think this is our first real hope to start coexisting on this planet together.
The hope stems in large part from Mikhail Gorbachev, who has put improved U.S.-Soviet relations high on his list of reforms, leading to summit after summit and the incredible sight of one-time hardliner Ronald Reagan today inside the Kremlin. But American and Soviet leaders have met before, signed arms agreements before. Some experts think the difference this time is that neither side can afford to pass up change.
It's very clear that both countries are very heavily over-militarized, and it's been very costly to both countries. In the Soviet Union, this has been one of the major causes of the economic stagnation.
What Gorbachev realized early on is that the reforms can't really work if he's constantly starving civilian industry for resources in order to get into the military.
But history makes clear the danger of predicting the course of U.S.-Soviet relations. Americans and Russians, comrades in arms in World War II, but when the war ended, so did the relationship. The Russians moved into Eastern Europe. The Cold War began. It thawed when Richard Nixon visited Leonid Brezhnev in Moscow, détente, but that too eventually ended in disillusionment, the Soviet expansion, the invasion of Afghanistan. The lesson in all this?
We should not identify relations between the Soviet Union with the personal relations of the existing leaders.
One case in point, Nikita Khrushchev.
He undertook some very dramatic reforms in the economy, in the party itself, and then the party decided they could do without him.
Kirkpatrick thinks it's too early to know if this time will be any different. Others feel that the reforms may go beyond Gorbachev.
So if he leaves the scene, things go more slowly, but I don't think it stops. I think it's bigger than him.
Russian students again are visiting U.S. schools. Soviet artworks are back on the walls of American galleries. It's a lovely spring day in Moscow, and Americans tend to be great optimists.
The main risk, I think, is that the American public may once again expect a transformation. I mean, this is still a competitive relationship. We must not forget it.
One facet of the U.S.-Soviet relationship is trade. Right now, there's not much of it, only about $2 billion worth last year. Both sides would like for that to grow, and while American companies are anxious to have at the Soviet market, Tom Fenton reports there are some problems.
The awesome inefficiency of the Soviet economic bureaucracy is the first problem Americans face when trying to do business here. Typewriters are rare. Phones frequently don't work or don't get answered. And the few computers installed are mostly for show.
The American philosophy is come in, sit down, make out the paperwork, shake hands, make a deal, and go home. And there's a different idea here.
Back in 1920, when the Soviet Union was struggling to survive, Lenin said, "We need the help of American businessmen, but what shall we pay them with?" Almost 70 years later, no one has yet come up with a good answer. The Soviet ruble is almost worthless outside the communist bloc. American traders are being forced to concoct elaborate barter schemes to take their profits out of the country. Firms are offered Soviet appliances in return for American products, but such things are virtually unsaleable abroad. Soviet television sets, for example, have a tendency to explode. When Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry's signed a letter of intent to sell his American ice cream in Moscow, he had to figure out something to receive in return.
And our idea has been to trade them Heath bars for those wooden nesting dolls that the Russians make so well. And we're thinking of painting them either like Holstein cows or like Ben & Jerry and selling them in our shops.
The problem in doing business with the Soviets is that the two systems don't mesh. Americans want to sell pizzas here, but the Soviets want American high-tech, which they can't have because of U.S. government export bans. So the Soviets now do most of their business with others, the Japanese and the West Germans, who know the market better, have fewer scruples, and take the lion's share of the available business here. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Moscow.
The business of religion in the Soviet Union remains tightly restricted. Despite the new policy of openness, many churches remain closed. But as Eric Engberg reports, religion is finding its way into the country.
American churches testing the outer limits of glasnost on a Soviet society that remains officially atheist are finding novel ways to reach out to Christians in the Soviet Union. Dan Wooding, whose group Open Doors views itself as smugglers for God, organizes Christians to sneak Bibles into Russia and other communist countries.
They want our money, they want our tourism, but they don't particularly want our Bibles.
We thank you, Lord, for the
At
honor.
fundraising dinners like this one in Washington, Open Doors and other Christian groups are also fighting to free Christians imprisoned by Soviet authorities.
And if you want to have real glassness, so let in each shop in Soviet Union will be freely selling all Bibles. Amen. Praise the Lord. Bye.
The Soviets control Bibles so tightly that they can bring $160 on the black market. But now the American Bible Society has obtained official permission to send in 100,000 copies, 4 times the number allowed in prior years.
One of the problems that we face, even though we've provided 110,000 Bibles so far this year, is that there are not enough Bibles to go around.
You pack your suitcase full of Bibles.
The Christian activists of Open Doors push more direct action. They want Americans who go to Russia for the state-supported celebration of the millennium, 1,000 years of Christianity, to smuggle in Bibles, then challenge any Soviet bureaucrat who interferes.
And say, I am going to personally write to Mr. Gorbachev and say, Mr. Gorbachev, I am bringing gifts of Bibles into your country. Why won't you let them in?
All the offering tonight will go toward this special need. It'll just enable us if you make your check.
So, the second millennium of Soviet Christianity begins with Americans digging into their pockets to buy Bibles, in the hope glasnost will bring Russians the same freedom to read them, which Americans take for granted. Eric Engberg, CBS News, Washington.
As correspondent Engberg mentioned, the Russian Orthodox Church is marking its 1,000th anniversary this year. Tomorrow, President Reagan has scheduled a trip to the church's headquarters, the Danilov Monastery, outside Moscow. The president's spokesman said the visit there is meant as a symbol of his concern for religious freedom. Coming up next, Dan Rather will be back with more from inside the Kremlin.
Hi, is that the tour boat?
Ask them.
Is that the sightseeing boat?
Afraid not.
We're all
They're all American Family Publishers millionaires.
Yeah, all of us. Gee, there are so many of you.
More multimillionaires than any of the sweepstakes. The one with my picture. It could make you rich, too.
Just like us.
$10 million rich.
Well, how about me?
You may be next. Hurry, enter before June 30th.
Dreaming the dreams of America.
Why do so many people choose GMAC financing to get the GM car or truck of their dreams? GMAC makes it easy. You do it all right at your GM dealers. And we make it easy on your budget with rates and terms to fit your needs. Don't just dream about a new GM car or truck. See your GM dealer about GMAC financing. GMAC! Official sponsor of America's Dreams.
Unlike a lot of high-fiber cereals, Fiber One is now low in sodium and has absolutely no added sugar. And no cereal has more fiber. Get more of the fiber your body needs and less of the stuff it doesn't.
Tickets for Webb?
We interrupt this purchase for a reminder. The Discover card actually pays you cash back for every charge.
I hope you like this.
It pays to Discover.
It was big news when President Reagan went for a walk among the Sunday afternoon strollers of Moscow. The truth is, summit or no summit, this was the kind of spring Sunday that brings Muscovites out on the streets and into the parks, especially the grand and gorgeous Gorky Park. Barry Peterson reports on Sunday in Gorky Park.
Gorky Park. From the days of the czars, it has been the place within the city to get away from the city. A place for dressing up and walking on a Sunday. dances these days are done by groups like the Co-op from the Red October Factory. The music drifts across the trees and freshly blossomed flowers. Spring can be tasted and savored and work the magic that spring is all about. This is a place for children. The old and cranky rides are imagination's magic carpet. But for Katya, it's a ride to a place she doesn't want to go. There is the magic, too, of meeting nature one-on-one, of making friends with something as beautiful as a black swan. For some, a place to just sit quietly as life casually strolls by. It is only a mile or two from the Kremlin, a reminder of how far away this slice of Russia is from America. But a lover's embrace, a child's wonder, reminders that this place is not so far away after all. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Gorky Park.
We may know some more tomorrow about whether the Moscow spring thaw for the summit is going on as much inside the Kremlin as it is here on the outside. We'll, of course, be here to cover it all for you. For now, that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather with Susan Spencer. See you tomorrow with more from the Kremlin.
The prince was having a boring birthday until I popped up with my new Canon SureShot multi-telly. It got me close. I want that camera, said the prince, and the chase was on. Everybody wants the multi-talented Canon SureShot multi-telly.
Daybreak on the mountain, smooth coffee blend in your cup, and when it tastes your way,
it's necessarily Nescafe. Great coffee blends to taste your way. That's necessarily Nescafe.
This man takes vacations for a living. Don't let him take yours. So don't carry cash. Carry American Express traveler's checks. Don't leave home without them.
Oh, look at me back in the 60s, working up a sweat. Oh, and that's how I used to pump iron. Not today. Today we're exercising more and eating less red meat. But red meat is a great source of iron.
Only Kellogg's Bran Flakes has high fiber and 100% of the iron recommended today.
So now I pump a little iron outside and inside. You know, I haven't felt this good since I burned that bathing suit.
Kellogg's Bran Flakes.
Пойдем, там надо в очередь встать.
I'm Kathleen Sullivan. This week, CBS This Morning is in Moscow covering the Reagan-Gorbachev summit and looking at life in the Soviet Union all this week on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.
Coming up on Eyewitness News, Memorial Day traffic problems extend beyond the state's highways. We'll have a report on how DUI arrests this weekend are pushing the limits at Metro's jails. The Soviet summit begins today. We'll have a report from Moscow. And the third time's the charm in Indianapolis.